These 33 odd transportation ideas that almost happened will break your brain. From nuclear-powered cars to floating airports, transportation history got seriously. Engineers pitched wild ideas that almost happened, with real money behind them. Some concepts reached full-size prototypes before collapsing in spectacularly weird fashion. Others stayed forgotten sketches, odd transportation dreams buried in dusty archives. Think jet-powered trains, flying tanks, and buses driving over traffic. By the end, you'll wonder which ridiculous invention might still return. So buckle up, because history's weirdest commute is about to depart. China's straddling bus that was supposed to drive over traffic. For a moment, it looked like China solved traffic. In 2016, the transit elevated bus in Hebei finally rolled. Passengers sat inside a full-size prototype straddling 2 highway lanes. Designers promised it would glide above cars, like a moving tunnel. Investors poured money into flashy scale models and glossy crowdfunding pitches. The giant bus sat abandoned on the tracks, already collecting rust. Police later arrested project leaders over accusations of financial fraud. Today, the idea survives mostly as viral photos of vaporware. 2. Ford's nuclear-powered Nucleon. Car dreamed of refueling once per lifetime. In the 1950s, Ford designers treated nuclear power like magic gasoline. Their Nucleon concept car replaced the trunk with a tiny reactor. Drivers would supposedly swap reactor modules at special service stations. Engineers imagined range measured in thousands of miles between theoretical refuelings. No one had actually built a reactor that small and safe. Radiation shielding alone would have weighed far more than the whole car. As nuclear optimism cooled, the Nucleon quietly stayed a clay model. Its futuristic shape survived mostly in museum photos and retro posters. 3. America's nuclear-powered airliner concepts, meant to circle the globe non-stop. Not content with nuclear cars, Cold War America studied nuclear airplanes. Projects like the Convair X6 and WS-125 tried marrying reactors and wings. It flew test routes so scientists could measure radiation around the cockpit. The dream was an airliner refueling maybe once per year. The experimental planes were scrapped, leaving eerie photos and technical reports. Today, nuclear airliners survive only in retro concept art and cautionary lectures. 4. Soviet Caspian Sea Monster. Ekranoplan, the flying ocean supercraft. Satellite analysts thought they'd discovered a secret Soviet seaplane or submarine. Instead, the Caspian Sea Monster was a ground-effect Ekranoplan prototype. It skimmed just meters above water, riding a cushion of air. At full power, this beast reportedly reached jet-like speeds carrying massive cargo. Engineers in Kaspiysk tested it on the Caspian's choppy waves. Western intelligence initially misread the strange craft on spy photos for years. Operational headaches, cost overruns, and accidents eventually grounded the Lund-class program. One giant hull now rests abandoned at a Dagestani shipyard beach. It looks less like a boat or plane, more like misplaced science. 5. Flying aircraft carrier schemes. Launching fighter squadrons from airborne mothership. The idea of planes launching other planes never really went away. In the 1930s, the US Navy flew airships Akron and Macon. Each helium giant carried tiny Curtiss Sparrowhawk fighters on a retractable trapeze. Pilots would hook on, fold their wings, and disappear inside the hull. Later, Cold War schemers proposed turning Boeing 747s into flying fighter hangars. They envisioned miniature jets dropping from bomb bays, then docking back midair. Real life stubbornly intervened with turbulence, complexity, and terrifying crash scenarios. Both Akron and Macon ultimately crashed at sea, ending airship experiments. Today, airborne aircraft carriers live on in video games and concept art. 6. Buckminster Fuller's three-wheeled Dymaxion car meant to replace buses. During the Great Depression, Buckminster Fuller tried reinventing the family car completely. His Dymaxion car was a teardrop-shaped, three-wheeled, 11-passenger Land Zeppelin. It debuted at the 1933 Chicago World's Fair as rolling futurism. Rear-wheel steering let the long vehicle make ridiculously tight U-turns downtown. Fuller imagined fleets replacing buses, gliding between skyscrapers like streamlined street, but a fatal crash during a demonstration badly damaged its public reputation. Conventional automakers ignored the vision and went back to boxy sedans. Only 3 prototypes were built, all eventually disappearing or being restored. Today, surviving Dimactions appear in museums, looking oddly modern beside contemporary mini Muller Sky Car, personal flying car that never reached mass production. For decades, Paul Muller kept promising the flying car was imminent. His M400 Sky Car used 4 ducted fans for vertical takeoff and landing. Glossy videos showed tethered hops, computer renderings, and hopeful early test flight. Muller claimed someday anyone could commute above traffic with airplane speeds. Investors bought into the dream, some later accusing him of deception. Regulators never certified the Sky Car, and true free flight never happened. By the mid-1910s, the company went mostly dormant. Projects quietly stalled. Ironically, modern eVTOL startups now chase similar ideas with different branding. The Sky Car remains a cautionary example of hype outrunning engineering reality. 8. Personal jetpacks, once marketed as the everyday commute of tomorrow. If you grew up on old newsreels, jetpacks seemed inevitable. In the 1960s, Bell engineers built the hydrogen peroxide rocket belt. Test pilots roared over demonstration fields, hovering briefly above amazed crowds. Each flight was deafening, spectacular, and over in seconds. Fuel tanks emptied so quickly that pilots barely cleared the demonstration fields. Still, magazines cheerfully sketched workers commuting downtown using personal rocket belts. Military planners briefly considered battlefield uses, then realized soldiers needed longer range. The surviving belts ended up in museums, movies, and stunt shows. Ironically, practical jetpacks today mostly serve extreme sports rather than 1950s monorail utopias, promising to replace streets in futuristic cities. For mid-century planners, monorails were the smooth, silent answer to chaos. Concept art showed sleek trains gliding above spotless downtowns and shopping centers. Companies pitched them at world fairs from Seattle to Disneyland and beyond. Promoters promised no more traffic lights, just continuous loops of movement. Real cities discovered monorails were expensive, inflexible, and politically controversial. Many proposals died after cost studies or local opposition killed bond measures. A few lines survived as theme park shuttles and short downtown people movers. The sweeping networks once promised never arrived, leaving charming retro postcards instead. Today, monorails feel more like nostalgic souvenirs than dominating urban backbones. 10. Pneumatic tube subway experiments, shooting passengers through underground Manhattan tunnels. New York's first underground ride wasn't the subway you probably imagine. In the 1870s, Alfred Ely Beach secretly built a pneumatic demonstration line. A giant fan literally blew a single car through a short tunnel. Riders entered from a fancy Broadway basement decorated with chandeliers and fountains. Beach wanted a 5-mile system, but city politicians protected powerful surface interests. So the prototype stayed 1 block long, basically an underground theme ride. Crowds loved the smooth, clean trips compared with filthy horse-drawn streets above. When Beach lost political backing, the tunnel was sealed and forgotten. Decades later, subway workers rediscovered the buried station like a time capsule. 11. Moving sidewalk networks proposed to conveyor belt New York City commuters. Before subways took over, some planners wanted streets themselves to move. In late 19th century New York, engineers pitched endless belts of moving pavement. People would step on at slow speed, then transfer to faster belts. Illustrations showed businessmen reading newspapers while gliding past fixed storefronts. A few fairs and train stations tried short versions, basically horizontal escalators. The fully networked citywide system never materialized beyond magazines and patents. Mechanical complexity, maintenance nightmares, and lawsuits scared off real-world investors. Instead, New York doubled down on subways, elevators, and plain sidewalks. Today, moving walkways survive mostly in airports, not carrying entire downtowns. 12. Jet-powered trains strapping fighter engines onto regular rail cars for speed. When railroads wanted publicity, some simply bolted jet engines onto trains. In 1966, New York Central modified an M497 railcar with jet pods. It screamed across Ohio tracks, briefly topping conventional train speed records. Soviet engineers later tried similar turbojet experiments on test stretches of track. The jets offered great speed, but terrible fuel economy and deafening noise. Braking systems and track wear also became serious safety concerns very quickly. Railroads concluded the stunts were fun for headlines, useless for schedules. High-speed rail eventually arrived using electric trains rather than strapped jet engines. The experimental cars ended up retired, remembered mostly through dramatic black and white photos. 13. Hovertrain experiments that tried to float high-speed trains on air. In the 1960s, Britain and France flirted with hovercraft-style trains. Projects like France's Aero train and Britain's tracked hovercraft rode air cushions. Concrete guideways replaced rails, while powerful fans lifted streamlined test vehicles. Top speeds during trials beat many contemporary trains and impressed visiting politicians. But the systems needed new routes, expensive structures, and complex switching mechanisms. Conventional steel wheel high-speed trains improved quickly, undercutting the hover train. Funding dried up, leaving test tracks abandoned across windswept countryside fields. Some prototypes were scrapped. Others now sit in museums as futuristic relics. The technology helped inspire maglev research, but pure hover trains never returned. 14. Maglev vacuum tube trains dreamed to cross continents in minutes. Long before Hyperloop headlines, engineers imagined trains racing inside evacuated tubes. The idea was simple: remove air, kill drag, push speed upward. Proposals combined magnetic levitation with sealed tunnels stretching under oceans and deserts. Some sketches promised New York to London trips in under an hour. Others linked Beijing to Europe or coast-to-coast America in record times. The catch was cost, safety, and building miles of airtight tube. Even tiny leaks or earthquakes could ruin pressure and derail entire systems. Despite repeated studies, no full-scale passenger line has ever operated. The concept keeps resurfacing under new brand names, still mostly on slides. 15. Undersea Atlantic tunnel proposals to connect New York directly with London. Engineers have been sketching an Atlantic tunnel since the first ocean liners. Some drawings show conventional trains. Others imagine evacuated tubes with magnetic levitation. One famous concept runs through mid-ocean service platforms acting like artificial islands. Costs are typically estimated in mind-melting trillions, even before maintenance or security. Supporters argue it could replace hundreds of daily transatlantic flights. Skeptics point to deep water, earthquakes, and brutal North Atlantic storms. So far, the idea lives mainly in engineering papers and science fiction. No government has been willing to bankroll even a serious feasibility study. The dream keeps resurfacing whenever someone wants an eye-catching futuristic megaproject. 16. Bering Strait tunnel plans to connect Alaska and Siberia. Compared to an Atlantic tunnel, the Bering Strait link seems almost reasonable. The gap between Alaska and Russia narrows to about 50 miles. Over a century, czars, American engineers, and modern investors have proposed tunnels. Recent pitches imagine high-speed freight, passenger trains, and giant energy pipelines. Backers talk about connecting railways from London to New York seamlessly. Engineers, meanwhile, worry about ice, earthquakes, and remote construction logistics. Political tensions between Russia and the United States add another obstacle. Every few years, a new proposal surfaces, rebranded with optimistic names. So far, the only connection remains shared migration paths for wild animals. 17. Giant ground effect cargo planes designed to skim just above waves. The Soviets weren't alone in chasing vehicles that barely flew. Worldwide, Designers sketched enormous ground-effect craft-hauling containers a few meters up. Staying low reduced drag, let them carry huge loads with less fuel. Some designs looked like flying wings, others like ships with stubby fins. Engineers pointed to open oceans as perfect natural highways without traffic lights. But rough seas, navigation rules, and certification agencies made regulators deeply nervous. Prototypes flew in several countries, yet none entered regular commercial service. Maintaining giant experimental craft with small fleets proved ruinously expensive. Today, container ships and conventional cargo jets quietly handle the work instead. 18. Gyroscopic two-wheeled cars, balancing upright using massive spinning flywheels. Imagine a bus-sized rail car balanced on a single skinny rail. That was Louis Brennan's gyro monorail, stabilized by huge spinning flywheels. Early 1900s demonstrations wowed crowds as the heavy car leaned dramatically. Even when stopped, the gyroscopes kept everything upright, defying common sense. Brennan dreamed of high-speed trains on narrow rights-of-way worldwide. But the machinery was complex, heavy, and frightening if power failed. Governments hesitated to rebuild networks for an unproven balancing trick. By mid-century, the full-scale prototypes were scrapped, surviving mainly as photographs. The underlying gyroscope ideas later resurfaced quietly in ships and guidance systems. One-wheel monocycle vehicles, putting the driver inside a rolling ring. Some inventors thought bicycles still had far too many wheels. Monowheels placed rider and engine inside a gigantic outer wheel. Photographs from the early 1900s show suited gentlemen piloting these circles. Acceleration tended to roll the whole machine forward around the driver. On braking, riders sometimes tumbled inside the wheel, cartoon style, uncontrollably. Speed records were impressive, but steering and stability were terrifyingly unpredictable. Spectators loved the spectacle. Transportation officials absolutely did not. Monowheels gradually disappeared into enthusiast clubs, museums, and occasional stunt shows. Modern electric versions sometimes appear at festivals, still more toy than transport. 20. Amphibious cars marketed as boats you could casually drive to work. Unlike many concepts here, some amphibious cars actually made it to showrooms. The best-known model, the German-built Amphicar, launched in the 1960s. Advertising showed happy families splashing through lakes in pastel-colored convertibles. On land it was slow, on water it was slower. Regulations demanded navigation lights, life jackets, and regular greasing after. Despite quirks, celebrities and enthusiasts bought enough to create a small cult. Eventually, stricter safety rules and limited performance killed large-scale amphibious car dreams. Today, restored amphicars cruise lakes at car shows, half-boat, 21. Luxury flying hotels promise non-stop cruises through the skies for weeks. If airplanes are cramped, some designers asked, why not build cruise ships? Concept art from different decades shows multi-deck aircraft with restaurants and theaters. Recent viral designs imagine nuclear-powered sky cruise airliners hosting thousands of guests. Passengers would never land. Smaller planes would shuttle people and supplies aboard. Draft itineraries look like ocean cruises, just permanently above the weather. Engineers quietly point out issues like weight, maintenance, and evacuation during emergencies. Keeping such giants aloft for months would require fuel or unproven reactors. So far, luxury airborne hotels exist mainly in animations and glossy renderings. Cruise passengers still board ships or regular planes, not thousand-room flying palaces. 22. Supersonic business jet concepts. Promising breakfast meetings on the other continent, designers pitched supersonic business jets carrying maybe a dozen high-paying passengers. Projects like Ariane AS2, Spike S512, and various Gulfstream studies appeared. Marketing promised New York, London flights short enough for same-day returns. The challenge was sonic boom rules, fuel burn, and huge development budgets. Several programs signed flashy order announcements, then folded when funding collapsed. Noise regulations still restrict supersonic speeds over many heavily populated regions. A few companies continue quietly testing low-boom designs, hoping rules eventually 23. Change. Rocket mail experiments that tried firing letters between towns by missile. Delivering mail by missile sounds like a joke, but it happened. Throughout the 1930s, enthusiasts launched small rockets carrying stamped envelopes as stunts. It fired a Regulus cruise missile packed with thousands of commemorative letters. The missile flew to Florida, where postal workers dutifully processed everything. Postmaster General Arthur Summerfield proclaimed it a historic breakthrough for communication. Economists quickly noted each missile cost far more than airmail postage. There were also obvious concerns about explosives, guidance failures, and international misunderstandings. Rocket mail retired after that single showcase, surviving mostly in stamp collections. 24. Solar-powered highways covered in panels meant to replace ordinary asphalt. What if every road could double as a giant solar farm? That question launched startups pitching modular glass panels to replace pavement. Prototypes showed hexagonal tiles with embedded solar cells, heaters, and LEDs. Promotional videos promised clean power, glowing lane markings, and automatic de-icing. Crowdfunding campaigns raised millions from people excited about futuristic infrastructure. Field tests revealed cracked glass, disappointing efficiency, and high installation costs. Traditional rooftop solar arrays quietly produced more energy for far less money. Transportation agencies balked at rebuilding highways around expensive experimental panels. Today, solar roads survive mostly as demos and cautionary engineering case studies. 25. Car elevators and rooftop highways imagined for congested, futuristic megacities. In the 1920s, some New York planners wanted cars to ride skyscrapers. Engineer John Henkin proposed a 16-mile highway running along building rooftops. Standardized 12-story buildings would connect, forming a continuous elevated boulevard. Elevators would lift cars from street level directly onto the skyway. Down below, pedestrians and local traffic could reclaim quieter, safer streets. Newspapers published dramatic drawings, but no developer wanted to rebuild Manhattan. Elsewhere, a few department stores installed car elevators to rooftop parking. Those remained small conveniences, not gateways to vast networks of elevated. Modern cities still experiment with stacked roads, but skyscraper boulevards never appeared. 26. Stacked double-decker highways designed to separate fast traffic from slow. Unlike rooftop fantasies, some double-decker freeways actually got built and used. Cities from California to Japan experimented with stacking lanes atop each other. The idea: fast through traffic above, slower local exits down below. Early promotional films praised efficiency while gliding cameras along soaring concrete structures. Then major earthquakes exposed how vulnerable tall, rigid viaducts could be. Disastrous collapses killed drivers and led to intense public backlash. Some double-deck sections were demolished or rebuilt at lower, stronger configurations. Others remain in use, constant reminders of mid-century faith in concrete megastructures. Urban planners today prefer removing elevated roads instead of stacking new ones. 27. Giant conveyor belt streets proposed to move city pedestrians automatically. Some future city drawings didn't bother moving cars. They moved people directly. Huge exterior belts would carry pedestrians between buildings without stopping or turning. Illustrators filled them with hat-wearing office workers calmly riding to skyscrapers. Engineers compared them to moving sidewalks, simply scaled up to neighborhood size. But questions piled up about safety, crowding, and people needing different destinations. What happens when someone drops something, trips, or tries walking against traffic? Maintenance crews would somehow need to repair kilometers of constantly moving machinery. Cities ultimately judged escalators and subways easier than turning streets into treadmills. The conveyor city idea now mostly survives in retro posters and parody cartoons. 28. Personal rapid transit pod networks, promising on-demand tiny automated sky taxis. Before rideshare apps, planners imagined tiny automated pods replacing buses entirely. Personal rapid transit concepts offered vehicles on elevated guideways or dedicated lanes. Riders would summon a pod, ride point to point, then send it away. The US even funded a full system in Morgantown, West Virginia. There, driverless cars still shuttle students between campus stations like horizontal elevators. Other cities proposed grander networks, but costs usually balloon during planning. Still, the pod idea quietly influenced later thinking about automated shuttles. Modern airports and campuses now use similar vehicles, though rarely citywide networks. 29. Vertical takeoff flying taxis pitched as Uber-style air commute services. Today's flying taxi hype looks a lot like yesterday's flying car hype. Companies such as Joby, Archer, and others test electric vertical takeoff aircraft. Renderings show quiet craft hopping between skyscraper rooftops like airborne rideshare vehicles. Early plans, including Uber Elevate, promised affordable app-based air commutes for millions. Test flights have now connected real airports, proving basic operations are possible. However, certification, battery limits, noise rules, and infrastructure all remain challenging. Analysts debate whether these vehicles become shared taxis, shuttles, or niche toys. The technology is real. The business model is still very experimental. For now, helicopters still handle most missions these startups target. 30. Winged tanks designed to glide behind bombers straight onto battlefields. World War II planners even tried giving tanks wings instead of parachutes. In the Soviet Union, Oleg Antonov designed the A-40 flying tank. Engineers bolted big wooden wings and a tail onto a light T-60. Bombers would tow it aloft, then release it to glide toward targets. On landing, crews would drop the wings and drive off fighting. In practice, fully loaded tanks were too heavy for available tow planes. A test flight reportedly nearly crashed the overworked bomber before cutting loose. The Soviet program ended after that, leaving only photos and scale models. Other nations stuck with conventional gliders, carrying tanks instead of flying tanks. 31. Giant overland land trains built to haul supplies across roadless Arctic tundra. Before reliable Arctic highways, some companies tried building land-going freight trains. In the 1950s and 60s, Lostory built enormous diesel-powered land trains. The TC-497 prototype stretched hundreds of feet with multiple wheeled trucks. Eventually, cheaper heavy trucks and new roads made the experiments unnecessary. The giant prototypes were scrapped or abandoned, fading into desert and tundra. Photos today make them look like concept art for a post-apocalyptic movie. 32. Inflatable hovercraft buses, imagined to skim effortlessly over city traffic. Hovercraft themselves were real, but hovercraft city buses never truly took over. In the 1960s, British experiments linked coastal towns using passenger hovercraft services. Some futurists extended the idea, sketching commuter vehicles gliding above urban congestion. Flexible skirts trapped air cushions, letting craft float over water or mudflats. On city streets, though, noise, spray, and debris became serious issues. Engineers also struggled with precise steering in tight traffic and strong crosswinds. 33. Underground suspended monorails, hanging trains from tracks in buried tunnels. Most underground trains ride rails, but one early system hung beneath them. In 1912, the US Senate built a tiny underground monorail. Small electric cars suspended from a single rail shuttled senators between buildings. The line was short, but showed how hanging trains saved floor space. Later visions extended this idea into full city networks buried beneath streets. Supporters promised quieter rides and easier station construction under existing avenues. In practice, conventional subways and surface monorails proved simpler to build. The Senate system was eventually replaced, but photographs still delight transit nerds. Underground suspended routes now appear in speculative designs for compact future cities. Cable car freeway systems propose to hoist ordinary sedans into the sky. If roads were crowded, some futurists asked, why not lift cars entirely? Mid-century concept art showed gondola-style carriers hauling full automobiles over cities. Passengers would drive onto a cradle, then hitch a ride on cables. At the other end, they simply rolled back onto regular roads. Supporters claimed this bypassed congestion without building vast new ground-level highways. Engineers quietly questioned swinging tons of metal above crowded neighborhoods. Insurance companies probably had even harsher opinions about dropped vehicles. Urban cable cars eventually found real roles moving people, not their sedans. The car-carrying version stayed a footnote in brochures and magazine illustrations. Magnetic road studs suggested to guide self-driving cars in bad weather. Autonomous cars struggle with snow, fog, and worn lane markings. One proposal buries magnets and studs in pavement to help guidance systems. Onboard sensors read magnetic signatures, even when cameras or painted lines failed. Researchers argue this could boost accuracy on rural roads and in storms. Pilot projects have installed limited stretches of smart studs for testing. However, upgrading every lane mile would be staggeringly expensive and slow. Critics note sensors are improving quickly without rebuilding the entire road network. Still, magnetic guidance keeps resurfacing in research papers about robust autonomous driving. Future cars may use hidden studs, even if humans never notice them. Car-sized drones imagined to replace family sedans flying above suburbs. Cargo drones keep growing, so designers naturally upscale them for people. Prototypes in China, Europe, and the United States resemble helicopters without pilots. Developers pitch family-sized versions that could someday replace suburban minivans. They promise app-based routing, autonomous flight, and fewer parking lots on land. Noise, safety, air traffic control, and privacy concerns all loom. Neighbors already complain about small drones. Imagine hundreds carrying people overhead. Regulators move cautiously, treating passenger drones like aircraft rather than oversized gadgets. Meanwhile, experimental flights continue in test corridors and special demonstration zones. Whether suburbs ever trade cars for quadcopters remains an open, noisy question. Giant vacuum tube package shooters propose to replace urban delivery trucks. Long before delivery apps, cities experimented with sending stuff through tubes. Pneumatic post systems shot canisters of letters between buildings using air pressure. Later proposals scaled this up for parcels, groceries, and even industrial freight. Underground networks of vacuum pipes would quietly replace noisy downtown delivery trucks. Some modern projects revisit the idea using automated carts in sealed tunnels. Supporters highlight fewer emissions, less congestion, and more pedestrian-friendly streets. Critics note enormous upfront costs and complex ownership questions beneath existing properties. So far, only pilot sections have been built in a few cities. But every time delivery vans clog streets, the tube dream resurfaces again.